You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 35, and this week we have another special guest interview later on in the show. His name is Scott Baldwin, aka Scottie B Cards, on Instagram and on YouTube. If you haven't checked his content out, he provides pretty in-depth analysis on the card market, and you'll definitely appreciate it if you're a baseball card collector, because he seems to talk about that the most. And it's great content. Hyung, you're the one who actually brought him to our attention. How did you find out about Scottie?
You know what? He was one of those guys that kind of just were pure hobbyists. And as Instagram kind of started with a bunch of card guys, you kind of follow each other and then kind of see the content. So I seen the evolution of him just kind of starting from nothing and then like him building what he built today, right? So
yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. All right, so we'll get into the interview in a sec. But before we get into that interview, off the top, I wanted to ask you, Hyung, to share about your recent submission experience to both SGC and FCG, forensic card grading. I know you got some bangers back with some awesome grades, but how was the service overall?
Overall, the service with both companies were outstanding. I couldn't say that enough. I was actually surprised that the service and the turnaround times. SGC was about a month door to door.
Wow.
Yeah, and FCG was actually, I think, a week door to door, which is ridiculous. Yeah, so grades for FCG actually popped after 3 days. And then by the time they slabbed it, quality check or whatever, and they stayed communicated through the whole process, which I thought was pretty neat. But overall, honestly, it was a great experience. I've submitted multiple times to PSA and BGS, and it is not fun. Submission's not fun, I'll tell you that. Right? So the even the building the roster, the ease of being able to just build a roster. I found that SGC was a little more difficult to navigate through the website, but as you kind of got it, it was a lot easier to input. But I think FCG, on the other hand, was more of a manual. You just type it in, and yeah, it was a very, very easy process.
It's so weird to hear these quick turnaround times after dealing with PSA and BGS.
Yeah, and you know what? At the end of the day, I think there's so much value in turnaround.
Yeah.
If you're playing this game, because we all seen price fluctuations, and there was a time when PSA had my cards, and I've seen some of the cards go all the way to the moon and back down, right? So during that time, you probably would have made more profit had you had just a quicker turnaround, from a grading company like SGC, and been able to, sell at the peak or, at the time. So I think the turnarounds are overlooked. And for the price you're paying, I paid I believe $24 in bulk for FCG and $30 a card for SGC. So at those prices, you can't go wrong, because at the end of the day, you need a service that, one, slabs and protects the card, and two, people who want to know the condition of what they have, right? And they could make those moves accordingly, where it's not going to really rob your bank account. And you could, if you want to take a card, let's just say with FCG, and it graded well, where it was a true gem, or it has even sub 10s, then you can make that decision whether you send to PSA or BGS at that point, right? And to get a proper evaluation at $24, this is what the industry is kind of missing right now with the huge gaps in grading. So I know there's a lot of bad press and bad heat with there's no other than PSA and BGS, but for me, it's all about, they're providing, again, a service that is needed in our industry, and these are the leaders that essentially create those solutions to the problems that we have.
Yeah, seriously, you can't go wrong with, like you said, the quick turnaround times and the price point. It's amazing. And there seems to be a growing market for both SGC, definitely, but for FCG as well, yeah?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are kind of looking at FCG differently. I know a lot, they do a lot of first chromes in baseball. So I think as a lot of people grade that, because I feel like first chromes, you need subgrades. That's why BGS was very popular with, first chromes. You don't see PSA back in the past grading a lot of first chromes. It's changed now, but BGS used to provide that service, and SGC doesn't cut it without subgrades. It's kind of that same situation. PSA, it's either a 10 or it's not, right? So I think FCG kind of fills that gap and void for that price point to have subgrades. So a lot of people are subbing their first chrome cards, right? So if you think about it, those are the younger players that aren't as valuable, but like I showed you guys today, they had a gold Wander Franco first chrome in an FCG slab, right? What happens when
seriously.
a 5-figure sale in an FCG happens, right? That's all it takes, really. And they're putting the right cards in their slabs. So I see definitely see growth in the brand and value as well. I seen a Joe Burrow Prism PSA 9 sell for, I think it was like $300. It averaged $300, and a FCG 9 as well closed out on bids around $300 as well. And this was just recently. So comps are seeming to be decent, because if you see their process and go through kind of what they're actually about, you're gonna get a true grade. Right? You know what I mean? And there was an example I showed you guys, which is kind of ridiculous. I didn't know if I wanted to make this public or not, because it didn't make sense, because I submitted an Oscar Gonzalez red shimmer out of 5. It's his first chrome. I pulled it myself, and it looked very, very clean. The only question was the centering. How tolerant is that centering, right? So I sent it to PSA, and I actually received a PSA 7. And I was very, very disappointed, because I check the card. I check every card before I submit. I know what they're looking for, and I make my proper evaluation to basically do that. So I thought something was funny there, and sure enough, I sent it to FCG because I thought it should grade better, and sure enough, it was a gem mint. It was a 9.5, with the only downfall was a 9 centering, right? So stuff like that, I think a lot more people are starting to see that there is a desire as well, like, because some of the stuff doesn't make sense. And I don't know about you, but like the price discrepancy is way too high for us relying on that PSA 10 brand so much. I know that's the way the market is, and I'm not trying to justify or change otherwise, but there is some balance in between where the value is, and I believe that's where the value is going.
Yeah, for sure. That being said, I think I just sent to you guys the breaking news about PSA opening up their $50 per card submission.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But the turnaround times is the big question still, right?
And I believe you have to be a silver subscription member.
Right.
And then it's only a certain slot amounts. So it's like you're fighting for that position again, right?
There's a limit. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
and that's the tough, and you don't know the turnarounds. And from what I've heard, it's been great actually with PSA. People who've subbed with them, they're getting great turnarounds, right? So I mean, if you get a spot, yeah, absolutely. But like the lottery that they did last month or whatever, I think like some people got like 3 cards, some people got none. It's like,
right.
What if you want to send 10? You don't have that option, right?
Right.
So
yeah, just going back to your PSA 7, which is brutal. Like even now, we don't know exactly why you got a PSA 7. Like the transparency isn't there, right?
Right, and that's when I was submitting in bulk. So I think they're just literally like, let's get these out the door kind of deal, because Johnny, remember the Stadium Club Luis Robert, who it had a pretty bad corner, but it PSA 10 as well, right? So obviously he's not complaining, and so shouldn't anybody. But at the end of the day, it's like the fact that like these prices are actually selling because a brand or a label told us that was the grade, right? So it's like, what if that really wasn't correct? It makes you really scratch your head, and that's why I think honest grading and transparent grading is needed, right? So that's why I'm just speaking for FCG, because I know they get bad heat, but I've been a customer now, and I'm very, very happy with the service. So both with SGC, I think their slabs are so underrated. They're great in hand, and yeah, I'm very happy overall.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that experience. And speaking of grading and authentication, I wanted to bring up the whole Logan Paul fiasco, but we'll save that for another day, because I feel like we could really get into what that means for the hobby, and just it's a crazy story. With that, let's just get into the interview with Scottie B Cards and see what he has to say about the hobby. All right, we're excited to have Scott Baldwin, aka Scottie B Cards, on both Instagram and YouTube on this podcast because A, he's super knowledgeable about baseball and how it impacts baseball card prices, and B, he offers good practical advice on how to be successful in the hobby by making good practical choices. And I know I'm not the only one who would agree because Scott has over 10,000 subscribers on the Scottie B Cards YouTube channel, which you should all subscribe to right now if you haven't already. We'll also include it in our show notes on this podcast episode. So yeah, Scott, so glad to have you on the pod for this episode.
Yeah, thank you. You talked me up way too much in that introduction. I appreciate it.
I wanted to do a good job. And yeah, like we mentioned off the air, we're really big fans of your content. Just the in-depth analysis that you go into with some of the hobby topics. So really appreciative of that. But
yeah,
first,
of course.
Yeah. First question we like to ask all of our guests is kind of start from the beginning, so to speak, in terms of where you started with collecting sports cards. Were you like us, where we all collected as kids and then we kind of stopped when we grew up a little bit and we all rushed back into it? Or have you been collecting all this time? What's your story?
So that is, I think, the basic story of almost anybody our age in the hobby. But my very first blaster box was at 8 years old. My parents on Christmas got me a 2003 Topps blaster box. So LeBron James rookie year.
Wow.
Whoa. Unfortunately, I only hit a Carmelo rookie, but that was my first introduction to sports cards. Before that, I did a lot of Pokemon, was really big into Pokemon. And as I got older, I enjoyed basketball. So that's what my parents got me. I collected exclusively basketball through 2010. And then I stopped collecting for probably 2 years, maybe 3, but I would buy a blaster box maybe once or twice a year.
Right.
So I never all the way left, but I wasn't really heavily back into it until about 2015 when I started to really, like, I'm a Rockies fan, so Arenado came out strong and Mike Trout was doing really well. So I looked at all their cards, and ever since then, I've just been into it. But it's funny because I did not start with baseball cards at all. I did basketball 100%. Wow, and now I can't collect basketball. I don't know what it is. Baseball just, don't ever see Moneyball, but baseball is just romantic. You can't help but be romantic.
I'm the same way, man. I'm the same way.
Sure.
Always go back to baseball, no matter what.
I have no idea what it is. I know the other sports have more money in them, but baseball is at least predictable for me, so I can make more money consistently. So
Love it. Great. Can I ask, what did you do before you got back into the hobby? You mentioned you stopped for a little while, but yeah.
Oh man, high school for a few years. So I graduated high school in 2013, and then I had a few years, and then I was into college and graduated in 2020. But just between those few years of high school and college, didn't really do it much. But then I remember finding my old Pokemon cards, and again, that kind of sparked it, along with the success of a couple of baseball players that really drew my interest. But yeah, it was stupid because those were the years to buy cards. If I'd have been in that era with all the vintage prices and prices of all the community prison basketball, what it was, I could have made a lot more money than I have now. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all have similar stories where we missed a lot of opportunities in the past.
I told my wife that I don't think time machines are real, because if they were real, all of those sports cards would be gone. So we wouldn't find those boxes or hobby shops anymore.
100%. All right, we mentioned it off the top. Your content is great, and like I said, very practical advice and good in-depth analysis. Just wondering what made you want to put out content, about the hobby rather than just, privately collecting like a lot of people do, right?
Yeah, so I enjoy my PC a lot, and even though my content's a lot more investment focused, and if you want to call a hobby an investment, you might call it speculation instead of investment, but I don't do a lot myself. But I was talking to my coworker. He's a baseball fan. I changed jobs and was sitting next to him, and we talked about the Rockies all the time. He's also a Rockies fan. And I would just talk about cards all the time and the cool Mike Trout rookie card I bought. And he realized that I understood it a lot more than I should, because I look at eBay all day, and you know how sports card addicts like ourselves are.
Yeah.
And so he just said that I needed to give it a shot. And he was telling me that for about 6 months before I finally decided to actually do it in January of 2021. So he still edits my videos. That's how I'm able to keep releasing content
Oh,
consistently.
awesome.
And
Nice.
so we have a deal with the monetization. And so it
Yep.
makes sense for both of us to keep going with it. And so without him, I would never have started. I would have just kept collecting the same way.
Right.
But I also started because there was just no baseball content. There still really isn't purely baseball content out there besides a few channels.
Yeah.
And so that's partially why I did it as well, because I didn't think baseball was represented well in like sports cards at all. And that kind of bugged me. So I wanted to change that a little bit.
No, that's cool. Definitely,
Nice.
us diehard baseball card collectors are very appreciative of your content.
Yeah, but you guys agree, right? Like if you look at Sports Card Investor, he focuses
For
on
sure.
basketball, sometimes football, but no
Yeah.
baseball.
It's very
If he does,
general.
it's very
Yeah.
True.
yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
my
right.
biggest beef with it at the time. So that's part of the reason I did it. So
Right.
Okay.
Nice.
And one of the for me personally, one of the draws that I got into watching you pretty much right from the beginning is for anybody that's getting into baseball, it's probably the most intimidating in terms of collecting because it's just so confusing. I think basketball is fairly simple. It's like Panini Prism, you know what the rookie cards are. But with baseball, anybody that's either coming back to the hobby or getting into it right now, and you're trying to learn what the heck is Bowman first, what's a prospect card, what's the main rookie card, there are just so many sets to pick from. It's really intimidating. So I think one of my earliest memories of watching one of your videos is when you made those sort of like pyramid videos. You're talking about like the top 10 Tatis rookie cards. Like that was so helpful for a lot of us trying to learn, which Tatis is the best one, the main one to collect or whatever. So yeah, it's really good stuff. You're absolutely right that there's just not enough, especially knowledgeable people like yourself in the baseball content creation world. So yeah.
well, thank you. And the baseball, there's a lot of great baseball card content creators. They just focus primarily on their PC. I'm sure you guys see that all the time. And so I just wanted to take a step further. The rookie card rankings, the ones you're talking about, are my favorite videos to make. Probably, I just wish they got more views. I could spend 3 hours on them.
Right.
I'll get a couple thousand views, but then I'll make a 5-minute video about PSA and it'll get 30,000 views. It's just
Right.
fun to how YouTube algorithm carries things. But
Sure.
I want to get more back to those roots because those were pretty fun. Well, thank you as well. I appreciate that you guys watch the channel. It's fun to hear that.
Yeah. And you know what? The reason why we wanted you on at this time is, of course, the 2021 Bowman Drafts boxes just came out, and we love just prospecting in general. And I know you mentioned on Instagram before we went live, you weren't huge into prospects, but just still wanted to ask you, any player in the 2021 Bowman Drafts that you're excited about, or any young rookies young prospects that you're excited about?
I have to say Benny Montgomery just because he's a Rockies draft pick and he has all the tools in the world to be good, but so did hundreds of other busts that have happened. So we'll see if it pans out. But I really like Benny Montgomery. Marcelo Mayer, he has, again, all those tools as well. I think he's right out of high school, if I'm not mistaken. And if I am, I apologize. But his numbers his senior year were very impressive. So I'm interested to see how he'll fare in the minor leagues this year. But for prospects, I always struggle with them just because of how expensive they are. It's pretty predictable path that prospects take when you buy purely prospects of when their cards are going to lose their value. And sometimes even if they're playing pretty good in the big leagues, if they make it to the big leagues, it's really hard to maintain those peaks. But if I was going to recommend any prospect to look at, I don't know if Wander Franco still counts as a prospect, but if he does, I think he is awesome. And then if you look at Julio Rodriguez, and I don't know Bobby Witt as much as other people, but Julio Rodriguez is the one that I personally have put stock into because I think he could be the real deal in Seattle.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the prospect versus rookie landscape could be really confusing for anybody who's not a huge baseball fan. So
True.
All right.
don't let it intimidate you too much.
I wanted to ask you too. I just saw recently on your Instagram story, you did a kind of a mini rant about prospects rarely working out long term. I love that because I agree 100%. And just the lesson there is knowing when to sell your young guys versus stacking generational talent, like you mentioned. Did you want to expand on that further? I want to give you the pulpit.
Oh man, I'm sure you guys get certain ways where you're on Twitter and you argue with some people about certain things, and then it just kind of you have enough of it after a while, about certain players. And all you hear now is Mike Trout is overrated, or he's never won a ring, or all these different things, or he's washed up. And I think people need to check their expectations on all these young guys. If you look at Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, for example, Mike Trout at age 20, he's 30 now, but through his age 29 season has this much WAR. He has 75 WAR. WAR is wins above replacement, meaning he's added 75 wins for his team in his career. And the average Hall of Famer is like around 65. So to be that good, that young is still really impressive. And a player like Tatis or Soto or Bobby Witt Jr., that's a big ask of them. They have to be Mike Trout in order for their values to maintain, because you have Mike Trout here with his Bowman Chrome autograph around $15,000, 9.510. And then you have Mookie Betts, who's at 50 WAR at age 28. Still really good, just not as good as Mike Trout. His Bowman Chrome autograph is like $1,200 and a 9.510. Right. So that's what I was just talking about. We're acting like these really good players aren't that good, and these really young guys are really good. So I just get annoyed with some of the outlook of some people. But to each their own. Prospecting can be very lucrative for sure.
Sure. And I think I mentioned also, like, I love your Mookie Betts takes. Like, 100% on your side when it comes to Mookie and being underrated, undervalued. Was there any other underrated players in MLB right now playing in the pros you might want to potentially invest in?
Yeah, so let's talk about Mookie Betts for 1 second. So that Mookie Betts was MVP runner-up in 2020. He led both leagues, American National League, so the entire MLB, in WAR, and he was a great player. And then in 2021, he has an injured season where he hurt his hip, and it affected his power and his batting average the whole year, essentially. And people now say he's not even a top 20 player in baseball, right? So that's the type of thing you have to pay attention to. Because his prices have dropped so much, he's an excellent buy. And he is smaller, and who knows how well he'll age. But if he ages like normal players, he still has 3 or 4 good years left in him until around age 31 to 32. So I think he's a great buy. Another player who is under the radar that is potentially on a Hall of Fame path, that it all depends on the next 2 years, is like Jose Ramirez, for example, right? He's a switch hitter for the Indians, the third base, shortstop, second baseman, all over the infield. He does not look good at baseball, but he just has all the tools to be a 7 WAR player almost consistently, maybe 6 WAR. Let's not be too crazy per season, meaning he's an all-star to MVP level player for the last 5 years. So he's another one that's really undervalued. Mike Trout, I have a hard time saying is undervalued because his cards are still the most expensive in the entire sport, but they are lower, which is a good target for that reason. But who else? I like Juan Soto. Can't really recommend him to anybody right now, but those are the 3 that I like right now. So Jose Ramirez is like my one sleeper pick. So I wasn't just saying the best players.
Right. Okay. And you said Juan Soto, you can't really, is it because his prices are pretty high right now?
Yeah, these prices are they're really high this offseason. So I think Juan Soto's usually a slow starter. So if he has a slow start, then I think he could be the guy to pick up once the season gets going. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, and just going back to your IG rant, I also wanted to add, I saw, I think, in one of your YouTube videos where you were just kind of answering other viewers' hot takes, and the whole Anthony Volpe is better than Mike Trout. I think you sarcastically said, yeah, go invest in Volpe. But yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, thank you. I didn't know if people were going to like that or be offended by it, so I'm glad it came on in good humor.
Nice.
My comment, for anybody who didn't see it, was someone asked, well, actually, I have a channel called Hot Takes where I ask you to say what your hot takes are in the baseball card world. Yeah. And someone said people should be buying Mike Trout instead of Anthony Volpe. And I told them, if you're not buying Anthony Volpe, you shouldn't be in the hobby. So that's where that came from. So
that was funny. All right, just kind of switching gears a little bit. I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but the big news in the hobby, especially with baseball cards, because Topps is involved. Any thoughts on Topps being bought out by Fanatics? Any opinion on that?
Yeah. So I think it's a very good thing for baseball. So I don't think much is going to change in the hobby for baseball collectors. But what is going to change is basketball and football collectors will now understand what sets to target in baseball. Because a lot of those finest Topps Chrome sets will carry over. And I think some of the barriers to entry of baseball, like we already talked about, is just we don't know what to target for a lot of people who don't know how to approach it. So I think that will help baseball. But on top of that, I just think it's nice to know that we're going to have Topps, the brand, for the foreseeable future. That was my concern. I'm sure. Did you guys feel the same way, or is that just me?
Absolutely,
thinking about it?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, really
That
happy
was
with
my
that.
biggest concern.
Great. Also have a lot of rapid fire questions, but I wanted to turn it to you guys. Johnny, Young, you have any question for Scott?
No, for me. Sorry,
Go
for
ahead.
me.
No, Xiang, you go ahead.
We started talking just on Instagram, just as hobbyists, right? So for me, when you started, I've seen this whole evolution. It was same. I said the same thing with Costa, where Costa cards, and he's doing big night breaks and stuff like that. It was the same thing. We're on Instagram with 0 followers, and basically showing off our PC, and then we started just shooting the crap about baseball cards and what's good value, and just to see kind of that evolution of you kind of going and growing past 10,000 subscribers. I was watching from the sidelines this whole time, and that's why I told Clark, I'm like, we got to get this guy on the show because he actually knows what he's talking about. So not necessarily a question, but that's how we kind of all, I guess, I linked up with Scottie earlier just through Instagram, and we just stayed in contact. We talk cards all the time, right? So that's how it kind of all started. Yeah. So
we've been chatting for how many months? We've been probably talking for almost since I completely started, if not before.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of our first followers or something like that when I started my account as well, and when we all started our journey. So it's always fun to see where everybody kind of takes it, right? And yeah.
No, totally. It's interesting, and like the subscriber count, I genuinely appreciate everybody who watches my channel, just because I know, like, out of all of the different types of entertainment they could pick, it's flattering to have them want to watch my stuff. And same to you guys. So thank you. One question I have for you guys. You asked me some questions. Who are you guys targeting in baseball for this year? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. Because go ahead, Clark or John, if you guys want to. Because I'm just buying everything and anything. It seems like lately, or I'm just ripping anything and everything lately, just for personal. But
Johnny, you go first.
Yeah, I'm in a sad situation because I got a pretty decent Luis Robert and Tatis collection, and I really want to get into Soto, but Scottie, you kind of mentioned it too, and we all realize it. Soto's just, he's flying high right now, and I feel like it's a little too expensive to get into it. So I'm sitting on the sidelines, but I definitely want a pretty decent Soto at some point in 2022. That's a target.
Well, I think Tatis, he right now. So I talked about Jose Ramirez, and if this is the first time you ever heard me talk, please don't go buy Jose Ramirez if he does bad. Please. He's just my one sleeper. Make sure we have that word in there. But Tatis is an excellent buy in comparison to his peers for his price right now. You can go buy a gold refractor from Bowman's Best or Sterling for $500 right now. I know that's expensive for a lot of people still, but in comparison where Soto is, I think he has tons of room to move. Same with Luis Robert. And once he has a full year under his belt, I actually did a video kind of on him, just barely. He actually is averaging around 7 WAR per 162 games played. So once he has a full season, if you can maintain, that's going to be a very good person to hold for you. So those are good ones.
I love it.
I'm glad you mentioned the Sterling, because I have the PSA 10 gold Sterling of Tatis.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Underrated, man. Sterling's so underrated.
I have the PSA 9 over here.
Oh, PSA 9?
Grab that.
Nice.
For me, I'm just looking over my most recent purchases on eBay. I love Rafael Devers. He's one of those guys I just think people are sleeping on. These guys know because I always talk about Devers every chance I get. Bo Bichette, I just feel like he was overshadowed by Vlad last year, and I think his skill level is amazing. And I actually bought Shohei Ohtani before last season, just kind of banking on, that he would put it all together, which I was lucky that he did. And I kind of flipped that for a Vlad Guerrero first Bowman auto, so that kind of worked out for me. But for me this year, I feel like you kind of mentioned it, Luis Robert. I feel like he has that potential where if he puts it all together a full season, you're just going to see his prices pretty much skyrocket over the course of 2022. So I got his first Bowman Chrome Auto PSA 10 just a couple months ago. So just holding on to that. And like you said, Tatis, Topps Chrome Auto is another one. Like, I agree with you 100% compared to like the other guys, even Acuna, who hasn't really gone down even with his ACL injury. I'm trying to buy an Acuna, but it hasn't come down. So I won Tatis instead and just investing in him. So we'll see how that turns out.
Acuna is a kind of a funny situation. He's actually gone up since he's been hurt.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they won a World Series, but he didn't play in it. So it's been interesting to see how that played out. But people are expecting him to be MVP candidate Ronald Acuna next. So we'll see if his ACL can recover well.
Acuna's prices are always bonkers. They are always bonkers in the hobby. Even before the whole boom, everybody was after Acuna, right?
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you guys. There's a lot of guys that are undervalued. I think those are the guys that you kind of go after, like Mookie Betts, like criminally, undervalued, criminally undervalued. Some of his stuff, right? And I do like Bo Bichette as well. I think Vladdy is a little undervalued too, because for me, Vladdy is about what he's gonna do, because I believe in his talent that much. So it's not obviously he has to put the numbers and follow up with what he needs to do. But I'm excited I think Vladdy, because he was the number one prospect coming into it, and everybody before the hobby boom, Vladdy's prices were skyrocketing as well. And basically his first year in the big leagues in 2019, when his rookie season came out, everybody thought he was a flop, right? And like I said, like you guys mentioned earlier, what were you doing when you were 19 years old or 20 years old, like give the guy a break, right? So it's I think his prices took a tumble, like to the point where all the like the Acuñas, the Sotos, the Tatis, they just went skyrocketing, and then Vladdy kind of just leveled out because 2019 wasn't a great season, and then all of a sudden he has that season, and you've seen the spike, but it was nowhere near where it was actually, where it was before. So for me, I think Vladdy's still a good buy, because it's not based on what he's done, it's more so of what he's gonna do. And like you just seen a small sample size of last year. So I like Vladdy's prices where they are. I still think it's a dip.
Yeah.
Totally. It's really hard to be very good against the best talent in the entire world when you're 19 years old.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to be as good as he was at age 22 or 21 this year, it's really saying something. So I think he's a great buy. I just wish he was a better defender. And he's actually working out hard this offseason. He made comments how he wants to get in better shape, because before, when he was a rookie, like in 2019, he wasn't lifting. But now he is. So that might help his defense. But we can see players like, let's look at more one-dimensional sluggers. Let's look at Frank Thomas or even David Ortiz.
Yeah.
Those type of players, they're still loved in the hobby because of that talent. That's where it gets harder with like a Mookie Betts. He's, in my opinion, I don't want to. That's too hot. That's too hot of a take. I don't want to say that. In my opinion, Mookie Betts is a generational talent for us, and he's different because he adds runs to his team, and runs win games differently than these sluggers. He adds on the base paths and on defense as well on offense. So his value isn't there yet, but I think in the long run, people will appreciate him.
But Bichette reminds me a little bit of Mookie. The numbers he's gonna kind of put up very similar, where it's floating around the 300 mark. 30 home runs is probably pushing it, but he can do it. And Bichette drove in over 100 runs this year, and he scored a ton. So I see Bichette getting that kind of Mookie treatment throughout his career as well. Kind of similar paths to kind of card prices with Mookie as well.
I'm interested to see what happens with Bichette. I'm biased. Dante, his father, played for the Rockies.
Right.
So I've always like kind of cheered for him to do well. But Bichette, I wish his defense was a little bit better. If you look at Baseball Savant, and I'm really going deep on statistics, I'm sorry, but that's just like it measures this metric called outs above average, which compares you to league average on your defense, and it puts you in a tier system. That's the one place where Bichette isn't great. But other than that, I think he's a great player. So if he can age better into like becoming a better defender as he gets older and learns, he could be a great pickup. I agree.
Nice. Scott, you make me want to buy more Mookie Betts cards. Right after this episode, I'm on eBay.
I make myself want to buy more Mookie Betts. I make myself. I think I might be too close. Like when you have a crush on a girl, she's really cute because
Yeah.
you're like talking to her all the time,
Yeah.
and then you're like away from her for a year, and you're like, oh, she wasn't that cute. That might be Mookie Betts for me.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, that's
That's
hilarious.
awesome.
Johnny, you got
Scottie,
a question, yeah?
well, I'll switch gears into like a question about content creation. Now that you're like a year in, you can call yourself a grizzled vet. Do you have like one piece of advice for somebody that is starting their content creation, journey or wants to start? Do you have any sort of like a singular piece of advice that you could offer somebody?
So I have a couple. I'll just say it this way: know what you want to do with it, what you want to do with your content. Like you don't have to know your voice right away, but if you want to have a podcast and share your thoughts with people, that's awesome. If you want to have daily content, that's going to have a lot of work. So just know going into it that it can be a lot of work in regards to making the editing really good, making your thumbnails well enough to want to click on them and watch it to get your click-through rate high enough for the algorithm to like you, all these different things. But just focus on what you're good at. And that's kind of what I did. I actually, when I first started, the Shohei Ohtani and was it Tatis? My rookie card ranking videos of them were really popular. And so I was debating doing other sports, but I realized that it wasn't a smart move because the reason why people like what I was doing is because I knew what I was talking about, at least a little bit. So it's one of those things, do what you know, because if you're able to talk about what you know, other people who are similar to you are going to be attracted to your content. And that's how you're going to grow.
Great advice.
Nice.
If you fake it, people will know. If you try to be the same as somebody else, people will know. Find your niche, and that's going to be really helpful. So,
Great
Good
advice.
advice.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Scottie, I wanted to kind of wrap up this interview with a few rapid fire questions, if you don't mind.
Great, let's do it.
Just about the hobby in general. But number one, is Wander Franco's Bowman's best card his flagship rookie card?
No, it's not. I know the reason I say that. So, for you guys that don't know, Beckett, for some reason, thinks that's his rookie card because they share the checklist with veterans.
Right.
That is the silliest definition of a rookie card. We have literal rookie logos in that set. And this is his third prospect Bowman's best card. So no, I don't think so. But
So
I see why people might think it.
Got it. So I assume that you're on the tops. Well, Series 1, I guess, 2022 will be his flagship rookie.
Yeah. It's going to be printed to the moon, but yes.
All right. I know we talked about how you take hobby hot takes from your subscribers, your viewers, and you kind of react to it. Do you have a hobby hot take yourself for this upcoming season?
Oh, man. Let's define a hot take. So how hot do you want it?
As hot as you want.
Boiling hot.
Whatever you really truly believe.
I'll give
whatever
you a
you
mildly
truly
hot take so that way people who are listening will actually not hate me. I'm going to say Mike Trout's going to put up an 8-WAR season and Mookie Betts will have a 6-WAR season. If they can stay healthy, of course. But that's my hot take. If they're healthy, they're going to have top 5 MVP seasons each.
Wow.
Nice. Okay.
Nice.
On the same topic. Let me get one more hot than that. That's I've already shared that opinion like 5 times in this video. Let me think. I think that Aaron Judge is going to be he's a top 5 candidate this year. Get back to me. We'll come back to that hot.
I like Aaron Judge, though. I like where you're going there. All right, we'll come back to you. Whenever you think of one, just jump in. All right, what's the favorite card you personally own right now?
Oh, man. I can show you the most recent card I got in. Go
Okay.
grab it real quick.
Sure.
And I'll tell everybody else who's listening on the podcast so that way they don't feel left out. So I actually was just sorting everything, just barely.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a really cool Juan Soto atomic autograph from Bowman's Best. I just traded for his Bowman's Best first autograph. So I know I traded a gorgeous card for not so pretty card. I just got that card in, but I also got this card in, which I really like. This is Mike Trout. So you guys might have already seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Bowman
Nice.
Sterling.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's numbered to
Underrated.
25. So
Shiny.
25.
it is an 8.5, but to get a Mike Trout rookie that low numbered is something I
Right.
didn't think I was going to do yet. So this is my newest one, and of course the newest one you buy is the one you like until You see something else you want on the internet, so you buy that one. So
That's a sweet card. Yeah. How about what's your Grail card? Something you don't have yet, but.
So I've always wanted to get a Mookie Betts gold Bowman Chrome autograph. And I actually had the opportunity to buy a Mookie Betts red Bowman Chrome autograph number /5 for $25,000. And at the time, I didn't have a powerful enough a collection to sell everything and buy it. But now I would have done it in a heartbeat because that would have been a great card. I think it's like a $500,000 card.
Yeah.
So I downgraded from my Grail being a red to a gold because I might be able to afford that one.
Okay.
So
that would have been a sweet card. And that doesn't come, obviously, out number /5. It doesn't come out ever. Right.
I know a guy who owns it, but I know what he's asking for it. And I think it's fair, but it's definitely worth more than my house. So probably not.
Cool. All right, then we kind of touched upon this already, but we'd love to ask our guests, our American friends, with Vlad Guerrero and Bo Bichette playing for the Jays, and we're rooting hard for them. We sometimes need that kind of check. Are we just being homers, or do you think they're legit studs?
I think they're both very good. I think Vlad's better than Bichette, and I think Bichette's great. But I think Vlad, he played in Dunedin and he played in Buffalo, and that really helped his numbers. But I still think he unlocked something last year. So no, I don't think your homers one bit. I just hope George Springer turns out to be a decent contract for you, because that's what's going to tear you down if it doesn't work out.
Right.
Yeah.
Paying a lot of money for Mr. Springer, and he might not play at all. So
For sure.
That's right. So
I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
No, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Agreed.
100%. Yeah, but we're still looking forward to the season. We got a young core.
How do you guys feel about Austin Martin being traded for, who was it, Jose Barrios?
You know what? I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
100%. I'm okay. I wasn't high on Austin Martin to begin with, to be honest. What worries about me with him is the size, to be honest. And he was at Vandy, and he performed well in the college setting, but pro ball is different, and you kind of see it in the minors. This year is going to be obviously a big year, but he came in with a lot of hype, and he honestly put very, very sub-average numbers, and that's what really worries me with guys of, I guess, his size. Is the strength there to endure, to carry? That's the same kind of question with like Mookie Betts, Bo Bichette. Are their bodies going to be able to kind of sustain? And for me, I'm glad we got rid of him, to be honest. I thought it was a good trade.
No, I think it was good for you too in the long run. It's one of those things where you traded your top prospect, but
Right.
he didn't have. He was in AA and had a sub 800 OPS with only 5 home runs. I think it was a good move. We'll just see if Barrios can be Barrios, then it's great.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited for you guys. I want you to beat the Rays and the Yankees. That'd be so cool.
It sucks in the AL East, man. I'm telling you, it's tough.
We grew up in the
Hey, you
toughest
guys might
league
have a second team with the Rays possibly splitting half the season in Canada, apparently. So
in Montreal, right?
Montreal.
yeah, so that'll be interesting if it happens. But no, I hope the Blue Jays can be good.
Thank you. Appreciate the love for the Jays. I wish you the same for the Rockies, but I think they're in full rebuild at this point, right?
I hope the Rockies lose 100 games next year so they can have a decent prospect. But think about their division with the Giants and the Dodgers and the Padres. They have no chance. But
You're in a tough division too, for sure.
Yeah, so if they lose a lot of good, better picks for the next year, I'll be okay. We already lost Story, so we're going to suck. But I'll still watch because I like
they're your
torturing
team.
myself.
They're your team.
Yep. It's baseball.
Yeah. Scott, really, really appreciate your time. Again, appreciate all the content you put out on your YouTube channel. So insightful, in depth, and for us, hardcore baseball collectors, really appreciate all that you put out. And again, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me on. It's great to be on the podcast. And thanks for all you guys do for the hobby. And if you ever need another guest talk baseball, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, we might call you on opening day. We'll see.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
If there's an opening day.
If there's an opening day.
Fingers crossed.
There will be. There will be.
Right,
I like optimism. Thanks, fellas.
All right.
All right, that was another great interview for our podcast. Really appreciate having Scott on this episode. Just his baseball knowledge. Like, you could tell that he's deep into it and he knows what he's talking about, right?
For sure, absolutely. And I think that's what's missing is the very, very detailed baseball guy.
Yeah.
Right? Or because a lot of people want, like talk about SSPs and SPs, and, they want to talk about paper parallels and all these, baseball terms and stuff like that we're missing kind of in the hobby, right? Because we get such a generic, hobby viewpoint from everybody, and it's always very general because they have to
Right.
cover a range of people, right? So it's good having those kind of like pocket guys that stick with what they're good at, right? So
Absolutely.
And especially this year coming, I think in 2020, 2021, it was just, the collecting world was just all about hype, right? Like you go for Soto, Tatis, Wander, Luis Robert, and that was it. And I think now that the hobby collectors, investors, whatever you want to call it, everybody's a lot more wiser. We're not, people aren't jumping on the hype anymore. I think the investment, the plane or trajectory is going to be a lot slower. So it's channels like Scottie's channel that are going to be really, really valuable for you in the future, and especially this year, where you really need to make critical decisions, or you need to find that sort of like gem out of a bunch of information, to get you to make it like a more educated decision making, right? Instead of just like making decisions based on hype. So, for those that are listening, like, yeah, I think Scottie's channel is super valuable for this upcoming year, where it's going to be a lot tougher to make money or to grow your investment or grow your collection. So
Yeah. Like guys like Scottie, his content, like to find those sleepers, like everyone's going to talk about the main guys like you mentioned, but his channel is invaluable for that, finding those guys that can really pop, and then it won't even cost you relatively that much to invest in. And then, you could also grow your collection that way. If you make a nice flip based on good information, it just will help you in the long run as well. So definitely appreciate Scott and him coming on just to talk about baseball and the hobby in general. And like we said, hopefully we'll have him back on sooner than later. Hopefully baseball will start in April, May. We don't know how this lockout's going to end up, but I'm optimistic. I feel like we're going to start on schedule. So hopefully we'll have him back during that time for another episode. All right, so let's end off this episode with our regular weekly segment called Pick One. And this week it's our regular edition, so we're just going to choose 2 cards or 2 sets, pit them against one another, and then we'll debate which one would we rather invest in. Okay, so Hyung, you want to start off?
Absolutely. We'll go today because we talked a little bit about Mookie Betts and Undervalued, and I agree. His Bowman Chrome is cheaper than, let's just say, a rookie's like, Tatis.
Yeah.
Right? Or someone who's, second, third year. So we'll go with the 2014 Bowman Chrome, first Chrome, Mookie Betts, BGS 9.5. They sell for about $1,000 to $1,300 right now, versus a 2016 Bo Bichette Bowman Chrome first, BGS 9.5, which sells at about $500 to $700. So you got more value is what I was going for. So if you're buying a first Chrome, who would it be, Mookie or Bo Bichette on the BGS based on their prices?
And those are both autos?
They're both autos, sorry, base autos. They're first Chrome base autos. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I was going to take the homer pick because it felt pretty easy. But after talking with Scottie, I'm going to change it. He's a huge believer in Mookie Betts. And, Clarky and Kyung, you guys are too. But I've been influenced the other way. I'm going to go with the Mookie. And kind of going back to what I just said about Scottie's channel, I think in 2022, it's just going to be so much more critical this year when you're spending your money and you're making investments, to be a lot smarter instead of just sort of chasing what's sexy or what's the best out there, like using statistics and all of that to your knowledge. And I think once people kind of catch on to how really, how amazing Mookie really is, everybody's been kind of saying he's way undervalued for the trajectory of where he's about to go, right? Hall of Fame, and you could be one of the best baseball players of all time. So given that his, one of his Grail cards auto base is only around $1,000, I can't say that that's not a steal. Like, that has to be. As much as I wanted to pick Bo Bichette, $1,000 for somebody who's kind of almost on that Mike Trout level, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm gonna pick Mookie Betts.
I feel like
you, Clark?
I feel like this was for me because I love Mookie. I love Bo Bichette. It's on record, and I'm gonna take personal bias out of this because you guys also know my Mookie Betts first Bowman Chrome Auto story where I sold it for a great $60 back in the day.
Oh.
So it's one of those things where like I can never buy that card again, but I'm gonna pretend that never happened for this scenario. And I also have a Bowman Chrome refractor of Bo Bichette BGS 95. So I already have his card, but I'm gonna pretend I don't have that. So all things considered equal, I'm gonna go with Mookie Betts too. Like, I'm such a big believer. That's why I kind of wanted Scott to come on the show too. I just want him to reaffirm my beliefs in Mookie, even more than I had before the show. And like, I love players that have done it before, like had an amazing season, which Mookie has done. I love players that still have the talent, but they didn't play to their potential because of injury. And I think if they stay healthy, and I believe in their talent, then it's and their prices have gone down because of their injury, then it's an easy investment for me in Mookie. And that was my thought process for buying Shohei last year. Like, he's had a great season before, got injured, didn't live up to the potential. Everyone was off his bandwagon, prices dropped, and that's when you just go in to get the price that, at the price level where it's selling now. And I feel like Mookie kind of follows that trend perfectly. So I love both players, but I think Mookie has the bigger upside. So I'm going with Mookie as well.
Very nice. Yeah, I think both of them are great buys right now, and that's why I put it up. It's, would you rather spend a little more money to get the better kind of like overall investment, or would you want to invest a little more for potentially a bigger, I guess, multiplier, because you're buying so low, right? So, but I agree. I think Mookie Betts is a serious buy right now based on what he's accomplished in his career. I even went and got that Topps Chrome Auto. I'm grateful that I did.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a Pop 1 Topps Chrome Mookie Betts Auto. It's an IP auto, but and I think that was severely underpriced based on his Topps Chrome price now pushing over 900 now, right? So there's certain cards with Mookie that I think, like his Topps Chrome, it's pretty expensive, but then his Topps update is dirt cheap still. It's only a couple $100, right? So I think there's huge opportunity there, and I think overall Mookie Betts is a amazing buy at $1,000. Just under $1,300 at peak, I guess, for his BGS 95, and I think like you guys all said, that it's gonna be a sweep. It's too good of a deal to kind of pass by. So nice. I guess we're all bidding on Mookie autos tonight.
Let's just call this episode the Mookie Betts episode.
Yeah.
All right, good one. And I have the Topps update red hot foil too, so I'm cheering hard for
nice.
Yeah, beautiful.
All right,
I'm going to stick with the Scottie B baseball theme today. My 1v1 is going to be, what is the more lucrative flipping strategy? Bowman first prospecting before they become pros versus pro prospects in years 1 to 3, the hype years. So we're talking, think of it as sort of Volpe, Mayer versus Wander, Bobby Witt. Which of the two investment strategies is the more lucrative?
Go for it, Clark.
This is hard to answer because I think the more lucrative is buying them as a prospect. You just got to hit. It's like a lotto ticket, right? But I feel like if you're playing the odds, I like playing the odds for when they actually play in the big leagues, and they have a good half season at least under them, and I'll pay a bit of a premium to buy their card, and being more confident in their ability to play in the pros. So I'm going to go with your second choice, But I think, if you hit everything right, like if you win the lotto, sure, that's more lucrative, I guess. But what's more realistic? I think, yeah, just seeing them in their first year or two. So that's what I do.
Interesting. I'm actually going the other way because it's the volatility.
We know.
It's the volatility. Well, for me, my justification, I agree. Once those prospects all don't pan out, you pretty much lose out because the values just tank, right? And the odds of every kid becoming a superstar or the next Acuna or Tatis is very, very rare. You're talking, very, very rare, probably 1% rare. And for me, it's all about leading up to it, following the minor league players, their progression, their prospects. And for me, if a team is investing millions of dollars in a prospect and they see the talent and they see the development of a kid going through that, I like that process because there's fluctuation in price so much in that game. And like everybody's after, we talked about when Scottie was on the show, a red Mookie Betts, going for $20,000 at the time or $25,000 that he missed out on. It's over $500,000 card now, right? Why do you think people get those cards, for $5,000 when Mookie Betts was, over that was overpaying at the time, right? So for me, it's impossible to get those prospect cards that everybody's after that have potential to essentially hit the lottery, right? But for me, it's all about playing the game within that time frame. This is not a long-term strategy at all. You gotta just do it for the profit and know when to kind of, buy and sell and, get in and get out. And there's some cards that you probably come across that are, colors of huge prospects that you're probably not going to sell. Anyways, you're probably going to hold hoping that it is the $50, $100, $500,000 card one day, right? Like the Bobby Witt Reds or the Orange or the Wander Super Fractors that people are paying enormous amounts. The logic is always, oh, he hasn't accomplished anything. Yeah, I know. Like, it's the expectation and anticipation. That's the whole part of the game because if he does hit or he pans out, those prices go bonkers and people see that as opportunity, right? So I don't think you could use logic because everybody's logic is so different, right? So for me, it's prospecting is a great opportunity for you to make that money. And it's saying that you could lose money and they might not pan out, but at the end of the day, if you hit a good color, I think that's why it's great to rip like first chromes or products. So Bowman Draft, Bowman Chromes, your Bowman releases, because the ROI potentially, like Volpe 2 years ago, was literally pennies, hundreds of dollars, and people were buying refractor autos for $250. They knew Volpe was going to be a stud. They knew Bobby Witt was going to be a stud. And at the time, yeah, he didn't play a minor league season. Who's going to pay $600 for a refractor auto? It's the same story, right? So for me, it's I like the prospecting game. I think there's so much opportunity there. And what scares me about the rookie game is we see that dip after that rookie season. They have a couple good years. People don't want their cards. They're forgotten. And then all of a sudden they have that GOAT career path. That's when cards start raising again, right? So for me, long term, yeah, you might play the rookie game, but for tendies or profits, I'm going prospects. I know I was rambling on about that, but yeah, I'm going prospects.
I like it. So I'm in agreement with both you guys. What I would personally actually do is what Clark chose, in that playing the pro prospect game. I think I'm not as into the risk game or like volatility as Hyung is. So that's what I would actually do. But then I'm gonna pick the Bowman first prospecting. That's my pick as the more lucrative one. And I'm not a big prospector, but I'm learning. And Hyung's a big prospector, so I've been kind of learning from him on how this all works. And I think for anybody like myself who's getting or like finding out about it, I think early on when you think about prospecting, it really confuses you, right? Like Scottie released a couple of videos where he's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, how is it that a Trout rookie is $3,000 and a Volpe rookie is $3,000? Like, how does that make any sense? Right. So I think for like an early collector, it doesn't make any sense. And those people will actually criticize those that are collecting in the prospecting world. But then when Hyung kind of dove deeper into it, it actually makes a lot of sense. I think if you're in this game before the prospect turns into a pro, because if you look at prices of these prospects, when they make it, like you're looking at Jared Kalenic and all those guys who are so hyped, and the moment they get into the pros and their first year they bat $120, like the price just goes woo, like all the way down. So I think your best bet is literally playing just the prospecting game, like playing that hype before they become a pro, and then you sell off. And of course, you're kind of left with the scary thought of you're the one guy who sold the Soto Red before he became a pro. Like obviously there's that world of it, but I think like Hyung, the thing that really stuck with me the most actually of everything that you talked about was when you mentioned for a top 10 prospect to succeed in the minor leagues, it's almost a guarantee, right? And that's what people are watching. They're watching their progression in the minor leagues. And of course, a top 10 prospect is going to bat or pitch out of this world in single A or double A. Like that's what they should be doing. So it's almost automatic that they're going to kind of add to the hype, which would almost guarantee you to kind of grow that prospecting card before they become a pro, right? So I think, if you talk to anybody who invested in like Joe Adell, Bowman First, and all that stuff when they were like hype prospects, I'm sure a lot of the guys made money before they sold, they probably, hopefully they sold off before they became pros. And I'm sure they made some good profits. So yeah, I'm going to say the lucrative side is the Bowman First. I'm not saying that I would do it, but I recognize that it's the more lucrative. I feel like it's the more lucrative of the two options.
Good one. Yeah, I'll definitely agree that prospecting is more fun to do because of the upside. But like I like your Jared Kelenic example. Like that's for me. I'm buying Jared Kelenic. I'm actually looking for one, like someone that has the hype prospect pedigree and doesn't perform well, but I still believe in him and his prices are as low as ever. It's a good time for me to buy. And you're not going to do that with every prospect. You're going to, like, some prospects you're like, you just watch them, you're like, oh, they can't play in the MLB. They can't play at this level, and then you're off, right? But, there are guys like Kelenic who I just feel like he's too good. And, the ultimate example is Mike Trout, right? His first half season up in the big leagues, batting 200, and look at the player he is now. He just had to adjust. That's all he had to do.
Right. A second huge example is Vladdy, right?
Vladdy too, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Luis Robert.
Robert.
Yeah. This year is the year of Luis Robert.
This year, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good one. We'll end off the show with my pick one, and I promise this is my last Luka Doncic pick one. I just couldn't think of one right on the spot before the show, but I chose this one because the prices are kind of ridiculous now. So my 1v1. On one side, you have your Luka Doncic Panini Prism Silver PSA 10, which is now at 2,700, 2,700. Every time I say this, it goes down a bit lower. Versus Luka Doncic's Optic Hollow PSA 10, which just sold for 2,700. So they're on par now. So Optic Hollow and Silver Prism, yeah. So what are you guys doing? Because maybe the reason why I'm bringing this up, like I'm really looking to buy a Luka Doncic right now, but I'm like just waiting. I'm just waiting as it goes down. But yeah. All right. What about you guys?
Man, this is tough. I love the Optic of Luka. I just love that card. I think it's a great card. But like I say, the Luka Silver Prism is the grail card of his cards. So I'm going Silver PSA 10.
Okay.
For the same price. If Optic was cheaper, I'd probably buy into the Optic. But if they're at the same price, I think the better buy is the Prism.
Okay. And pop count is, I'm just letting you guys know, Silver Prism is about 2,000. And Optic Hollow PSA 10 is about 200, 250.
Oh, 200. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna pick Optic Hollow, and it's a little bit personal bias. We're a bunch of old head collectors, and the rated rookie, man, like I love the Optic product, and it's tough to say because I'm 100% in agreement. We even talked about it last week, and I was, pumping up the Luka Silver. Like it's gonna be an all-time card. It's gonna be his like main iconic card. So it's hard to kind of come off of that. It's like, this is kind of a tough choice. But the Optic Holo, I don't think will be that far behind in terms of one of the main cards to collect. It's kind of like LeBron Topps Chrome versus Refractor versus the Bowman Chrome Refractor. I think the Bowman Chrome Refractor values are still pretty high, right? And I think the Optic Holo, the print run is crazy low. I think maybe not a lot of people realize that. And also the gem rate is crazy low. So I think that low population is really going to uphold the values. I'm actually kind of surprised. It makes sense that they're the same price in a sense, but I'm actually surprised. I would have imagined the Holo being more like $2,100 versus $2,700. But
That's
I would
probably pop count protection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if Clark values you, I would try and be a little patient and see if I could make a move and make a steal on an Optic Holo. I'm for the Optic Holo.
Okay. Well, I agree with all your points that you just mentioned, John, about the Optic Holo. It's pure hobby logic again, like low pop count and the price it is now. But I've been in the hobby long enough where the market is the market. The Prism Silver is the one that people want, and I don't get it. That's
like $9,000 card.
Yeah, exactly. At one point, and I'm just not gonna fight it anymore. So I'm just waiting for the Silver Prism to maybe go sub 2,500, and I might really be tempted at that point. But I'm still gonna go with Silver Prism, and there's because the demand is still there, it's gonna be fluid. I believe when it does go up, I think there'll be even bigger demand once Lucas starts actually playing consistently well. So I love the Optic Holo too. Like the card I saw, the visual of Optic Holo I prefer more than the Silver Prism in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm doing it as an investor, this is the scenario that I'm putting out, I'm gonna buy the Silver Prism. All right.
Makes sense.
Good ones today. And great episode, I thought, especially with the interview with Scott. And thanks again for all our subscribers, followers, listeners to our podcast. We're really hoping that we get more interviews over the course of this year and just really bringing a lot of cool people in the hobby on just to talk about the hobby, and just go really in depth, nerd out whenever possible. So thanks again, guys. If you haven't subscribed already, you can do so wherever you listen to your podcast, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.